Hey everybody, it's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast, Twitter free edition. This might be episode 3 of the Twitter free edition. How's it going, man?
I think it's the second one we've been Twitter free. The one before that was the one where you coerced me into this entire mess in the first place, where you strong-armed me with peer pressure and convinced me that this was a good idea. So I think this is 2 that we've been Twitter free.
Oh man, it's crazy. My family's kind of out of town this week, and I'm Twitter free at the same time. So you want to talk about idle hands? Normally, I wouldn't have this much free time on my hands. So I've been going to see movies. I've been working out twice a day. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with being Twitter free, but it's kind of at the right time for me to also have some extra time on my hands and really not blow it on social media.
Oh, it's absolutely because of Twitter. Because what Twitter does is it slows down everything you do. It's not that you sit there and scroll for 40 minutes. It's that you wash one dish and then you scroll and then you wash another dish and then you scroll. And it just makes every task take twice as long.
You take 47 minutes in the bathroom.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's knocking on it. Like, no, I just live here now. This is just where I am.
I'm in the middle of a heated debate.
Yeah.
I finished pooping 25 minutes ago, but...
You don't understand. Somebody said something that the Cavs should trade Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins. I'm going to be in here a while.
Oh, okay. More seriously, though, how are you dealing? Did you get over the shakes yet?
I did get over the shakes. There's definitely times where I have to come clean on one thing. I cheated today. I posted something. My wife is holding a fundraiser this Tuesday at the Lakewood Chipotle between 4 and 8. Please stop in for Valosano. 100% of proceeds go to cancer research. So I just retweeted and posted her tweet, but I didn't check my feed, and I logged right out. So I did cheat a little bit. So if anybody out there wants to call me out on that, I did do that. It's for a good cause.
Did you reinstall the app on your phone to do it, or did you do it from a web browser?
I signed in from my web browser and then signed back out.
See, I think there's a little bit of justification there, because the only times that I've cheated, I posted a link to this podcast or the podcast last week, and that was done via the web, linked through the YouTube website. They kind of connect. And then there was one, I can't remember what the commentary was, but in our Slack channel, Scott replied to somebody on Twitter, and it was part of a chain. And I clicked on that on my computer, and it opened the web browser just so I could see the link that he was talking about, and then I clicked the link to go to the website. But overall, like the big thing was, and I think I can eventually, this is kind of gonna take it to the next step of the conversation. I think I can very easily get back to using Twitter in a good and healthy manner. I needed to stop using it how I was using it.
I think I'm getting much better at needing, like, that need to reply to everyone, or that need to, like, retweet every political thing that makes me angry. Yeah, I think I'm over that, but the constant scrolling, I find myself just opening, like, Facebook and Instagram and things like that. I visited a message board today. It's been a while since I did that. So I feel like I don't like any of those other apps. Twitter's really the only app I like. So I need another week or 2 where that stuff bores me, and I just get out of the practice of opening my phone the second my mind is idle at all. So I think I'm not quite there. I think I'm getting better about the negative actual tweeting, but not the scrolling the timeline part of it.
And for those of you who think this just sounds sad,
it is.
Well, it is, but you should feel sorry for us in the way that you feel sorry for a smoker. Like, it's dumb to start, but I think we're finding and we're learning over time that all these things were created in such a manner to feed the addiction part of your brain.
Oh yeah, and there's certainly there's certainly good aspects to it. I would say I talk to and hang out with more people I've met through Twitter than I do friends I had, off of Twitter at this point. I've met so many great people that started like a sports thing or started this, started that, and that I just hang out with regularly now. And so, there's a lot of good that comes from it. And I get all my news. I'm a much more informed person than I ever was.
So, well, we should talk about that. whether or not you actually are more informed from consuming on Twitter, but I think it's safe to say that you and I wouldn't be doing this podcast together now and for the past X number of episodes if not for Twitter.
Right. I mean, it's opened so many opportunities. I wouldn't be, with Waiting for Next Year, which is an awesome opportunity that came from that. I wouldn't know all the great people. There's certainly very good things. I mean, even career-wise, having, a little bit of a social following and being knowledgeable in that space I'm in marketing, so, that's big in that area. But, having that little bit of knowledge and notoriety there has certainly helped me in my career a lot.
So now, the other thing that you said, where you're much better informed when you're on Twitter, do you think that's actually true, or do you think it's feeding the incremental parts of every story so it's like fool's gold? You'd be better waiting till you're better waiting till a story is like legit, almost like complete, rather than suffering the ups and downs and the false rumors and all the innuendo around something. How many times have you reacted to something that turned out to not be true or be partially true or have different context than what was provided on Twitter?
Oh, I certainly do that all the time. But I do still think you miss a lot of those stories. I didn't know about that the kids trapped in the cave. I didn't know about that until they were starting to rescue them. I think my wife was like, "How do you not know this is happening?"
That's interesting.
I think my thing is I was so hooked into Twitter that was the only place I got news. I don't watch news at all. We don't have cable or anything like that. I don't watch anything. I don't scroll other sites. I don't go to CNN or ESPN. It was my only news source. So I'm almost completely cut off from the world. I don't know anything about Trump's Supreme Court nominee. I don't know a single thing about. I don't even know his name.
Oh, stuff like that. I knew that because there were a couple of podcasts on that one. So I still keep up with the podcast, but so I have found myself going back to CNN. CNN used to be my go-to, not because I'm in love with CNN or its commentators, but for some reason, maybe it's because it's 3letters.com. That was always my go-to over the years, and I stopped going there because when I started using my phone for everything, if you're listening to a podcast and you load CNN.com, at least on my phone in Chrome, it takes over the audio.
God, how do I work in advertising, and we just cannot, we cannot figure this stuff out. The ads do that. The web pages do that.
It's the only web page that I can think of that does that on my phone to my podcast app.
And here's a little side tangent. The entire world is not caught up with how popular podcasts are. Advertisers have not caught up even a tiny, tiny little bit. It's all still MeUndies and these other companies who are advertising on podcasts. And people aren't optimized for it. They're not easy to find. There's not a culture built around them that's super strong. It's a very strange thing to me because I feel like it's reached scale now, and the people who are into podcasts are extremely into it. I would love to see information. I bet there's a lot more podcast listeners than Twitter users.
Oh, that's probably true.
But you wouldn't think of that in our culture, right? I mean, Twitter is like a part of every news broadcast and every show anymore. Let's see, people are tweeting about this and blah, blah, blah. And you don't have that same kind of thing with podcasts.
I think Twitter users are disproportionately represented in terms of voice in culture because it's so easy to take what they say and add it into stories. But I think you're right in terms of actually reaching people and reaching people with depth. I think podcasts are far, far bigger. If Twitter users are overstated in the culture, podcast listeners are understated at least so far in the culture because there's no natural feedback loop for podcasts.
Right, and I wonder if that's the next kind of big thing that comes soon is people finding a way to leverage that and to monetize it better and to just make it a bigger part of people's lives where a lot of people listen to podcasts, but make it more fully immersive. I think that could be happening very soon, especially from the advertising side.
Right now, it's still really underpriced in the marketplace.
Yeah, people just don't seem to understand how to use it. And I'm amazed at how when I listen to a podcast, and like I said, I'm speaking a lot on the advertising side of things, but the ads are so much more valuable than you get anywhere else.
Yes.
It's the person that everyone has tuned in specifically to listen to talks for 30 seconds or a minute about how much they love a product that you are trying to sell. Like that's the dream as an advertiser, is getting, an endorsement from the talent that everybody's tuned in to listen to speak intelligently on your product. It's not a radio spot where they're selling Windows or something. They're clearly just reading a script. Most podcasts have actually used the product and are only selling products that they're familiar with, and it's just such a good vehicle. It's just amazing it hasn't caught on more.
What's really funny to me is some of the podcasts that I subscribe to are for radio shows that I like, that I can't necessarily listen to all the time, and they have now got their episodes in a network, and they're basically implanting radio ads on the front and end of those podcasts, and I feel like they're completely missing the point. I lost you for a second. Are you back?
Yep, I'm back. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Did you hear what I said?
No, so people implant on the front and back end.
Yeah, they're basically putting radio ads for Ford or Bud Light, the same ads that you would hear on the radio that you're used to ignoring. They're just putting it in front or behind an interview from Bull and Fox, or from Ken Carman's show featuring Anthony. And they're taking this valuable inventory and what you're talking about, where you make all this money by reading ads in the voice of the host, and it's like the worst implementation of a good idea.
Yeah, and we talked about a little bit last week that on the newspaper side of things, they just gave away all the content online for free.
Yes.
And how from the very beginning they did that, and there was no way to turn back once they started. And at least a lot of people who are doing podcasts are trying to monetize it in some way with some sort of ad, which is still beneficial. But yeah, I agree that that's not the best way to go about it. And people can skip so easy. I mean, if you hear music, you just smash that skip 15-second button until the music's over. But when you do a live read, it's a lot harder to kind of know when it begins and ends, and it's more organic, so you're not always looking to skip things like you do when you get a more intrusive ad like that. So yeah, I'll be very interested in what podcasts are like in 2 or 3 years.
It'll be also interesting to see what kind of intelligent layer is on top of it, because right now it might as well be a dumb MP3 downloader, and I'm sure Apple has loads and loads of stats on who's doing what and how, but they're not sharing that, and so there's no way to act upon it.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly, in my experience, it's surprisingly basic in terms of what you can do in podcast advertising. And a lot of it's just based on the content and things like that, but you don't have a lot of stats on readership. And it's difficult because it's just on somebody's phone and they download it, so it's difficult to get. They're not giving a lot of their personal information at any point in that transaction. So you don't know a lot about people. You know a lot about the podcast that you're advertising on, but not a lot about the audience that listens to them.
So how many podcasts do you subscribe to that you haven't really listened to actively recently, and yet you're still downloading those episodes?
Oh, man. I'd probably subscribe to 7 or 8 podcasts, and I probably actually listen to 3 or 4.
Yep. I think there's a lot of that, too. So
yeah, and that makes it difficult because you're still getting a stat. I don't know if you can do a stat on played versus just downloaded, but yeah, that makes it very difficult. Is that it's just the nature of the thing, is that you don't listen to everything that you're actually getting.
So without getting yourself into trouble professionally, how silly is it that people are still spending as much as they are on TV?
I think it's crazy in the sense that people are still thinking of TV and spending on TV like it's the only medium, and they're not looking at video on demand and your streaming devices and things like that are just TV now. Like, I consume TV almost entirely through my Apple TV. I don't really ever watch anything other than that. And I think that that's fairly common. Even people who still have cable are watching everything time delayed or video on demand and things like that. So I think a lot of people still buy like a spot in a primetime show thinking people are going to watch it, when most people are watching that in some other fashion.
The Apple TV has been kind of a game changer, because we dropped DirecTV finally. We went with YouTube TV, and I tried Roku before. I'd obviously used my PS4 and different things, but Apple TV really is kind of as good as everybody said it was. And I find myself, I'll even watch sports time shifted because Apple TV makes it so easy to zip through segments at a time.
Yeah, I love that new option. All of the things I've been watching lately. It's like, oh, do you want to watch this game right now, or do you want to start it from the beginning and catch yourself up? And it's like, oh my god, like that's amazing. I remember I had an uncle that used to watch NBA games, and he would, fast forward through all the commercials, through the free throws, things like that. And he said you could get through a game in 40 minutes or an hour. And the same for NFL. He said he'd use that 30-second skip button after every play because that's about how long it takes to line up and get to the next play. And you can watch a game in a half hour. And it's like, that's genius, and that's how it's going to hurt. And I've been saying this for a while. There's a bubble coming with these TV contracts that sports networks are getting because people are willing to pay that because they think it's the only thing that people still watch live. But at some point, people aren't going to watch it in the same way that they've been watching it on TV, and those contracts aren't going to be worth what these networks are doling out for them. So I wonder if that point's coming too as we get to a streaming point.
So with newspapers having given away their content for free and trying to put the genie back in the bottle, do you ever find it curious how critical fellow media members can be on Twitter and other places about ESPN Cleveland and the land on demand, charging people for on-demand audio of their shows?
No, I'm all for charging for content. I remember when The Athletic first came out that people got really mad. Like, I'm not paying this. It's like $40 or $60 a year, depending on what offer they're giving this week. But I was shocked at how angry people get at the idea of paying for content. And I kind of have this, I guess, working in advertising, I didn't realize how much people don't equate advertising to them getting to see and listen and do all of these things. Like, I don't think the normal person thinks that advertisements are why they get to watch TV or why they get to read something online. I think they just think it's there. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I've got the Indians game on, and the entire outfield wall is covered with advertisements, and people are still paying ticket prices. So I just don't think...
Oh, it wouldn't go away, but I mean more the media side of it.
Right. No, I get it, but I think that's related. Like, people just think of advertising as extra. I don't know.
Right. And so people will complain about how awful sports writing is or how often the media is, but you ask somebody to pay for something better, and they are not willing to do that even on a minuscule level. So it is very interesting listening to people complain about the quality of content and also about having to literally pay any price for better content.
Yeah.
Not better, but just any content, I guess.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing is, like, I get that some people are critical of ESPN Cleveland. Some people don't like the host there or whatever. But if you can find your 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 fans who are if you find your audience and it makes sense, I don't understand what the issue is.
Right. And if you hate ESPN Cleveland that much that you're furious at them trying to charge anything, then why are you talking about them at all? Were you listening to them before? Why were you listening to them? If this is that awful of a product that you can't imagine paying $8 a month.
Have you ever been part of a brand war? Like, were you Team XM over Team Sirius? Were you PlayStation over Xbox? Have you been Apple versus Mac? Have you ever engaged in brand wars?
I don't think so. Not much, no.
I used to all the time. And when Sirius and XM merged and basically Sirius took over XM, I decided I was never going to do it again. So, like, I like my Mac and I like my PC. I no longer engage in these things. I refuse because I think it's the worst version of myself, and I feel like a sucker if I'm like Team Pizza Hut over Team Domino's.
Right, and it's this whole thing. It becomes bigger than any real argument for any of those things. Yes. And I always feel like that. I have an iPhone, and it's not because I love Apple and think Apple's amazing. It's just what I've always had, and it makes sense. And I have other Apple products, and it all works together. And my family has it. We can FaceTime. It's just easy and it's convenient for me. And then you get people like, oh, you're such a sheep. You're just following whatever the marketing tells you, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is just the product that just makes the most sense. I don't think about it that much. If you're thinking about it so much that you think it defines me as a person, like it's doing more to you than it is to me at this point,
Well, I think people engage in that with ESPN Cleveland versus 92.3 The Fan, which is hysterical because there's so much cross-pollination. They both have Browns contracts. The hosts actually kind of know each other, and it's not like they're standing off like the cast of Anchorman, you know?
So I don't do sports radio a whole lot. And a lot of it is because all I really hear anyone do is complain about sports radio. It's like, all right.
You know who I really hate? Everybody on sports talk radio. Andy Baskin, hate him. Ken Carmen, hate him. Adam the Bull, he stinks. And Goldhammer, the worst ever. You know, it's like, is there anything you like?
Right. It just feels like something everybody listens to, and then just to mock and hate, but yet they're still sitting there and they're still listening to all those ads, and those guys are still making, tons of money because everybody's listening to them, which is great. Good for them. They're clearly good at their jobs because people are listening. And, in today's world, for some reason, even if people don't like you, it's good because they still listen because people are weird and don't make any sense. So it's all working for them. But sports radio has just never really been my thing. And it's one of those things that from the outside, when you're hearing people talk about it, you're just like, I don't understand this at all. You know what I compare it to? Everybody talks about Drake all the time, and I feel like everybody makes fun of Drake, and yet when he releases music, everybody listens to it and talks about it. And I don't understand how that works at all.
Yeah, it's like his popularity score defies his popularity score in culture defies how much people love his music.
Yes. Like, all you see online are jokes about Drake. Like, it doesn't feel like anybody takes him serious at all. And I could be way off here. I'm clearly, not deep into that scene or anything. But when he releases music, it's like it takes over. And everybody's listening and everybody's talking about how great it is. And it's just so odd to go from jokes to talking about how great he is. I can't think of another music or movie star or anything that's considered, partially a joke personally, but just reviled so much professionally. It's so strange. But anyways, that's kind of what sports radio. It's like everybody makes fun of it all the time, but then if they say anything, everybody's got to react and talk about it. And oh my God, this is going on.
Well, and I try to stop doing that too. Like, if I hate Skip Bayless, if I don't respect Skip Bayless when he's acting like a clown, I'm not going to go and use him when he agrees with me on a point that I'm making. I'm not going to be so shallow as to accept his opinion when he agrees with me. Either I like him or I don't, and I'm going to steer clear of him or embrace him all the time.
Right. You can't pick and choose when to use somebody's opinion if you don't respect that opinion in the first place.
But he just said the perfect thing about LeBron that backs up my point.
Then you just steal it. That's what Twitter's all about. You just steal a tweet.
So I have a theory about smartphones and how you ended up on the team that you ended up. Not you, but like people in general, because... And this is anecdotal based on just me and one of my friends, but he tried the iPhone when it was the first iPhone. And it was such a disaster that he just dropped it and went over to Android as his second super smartphone. Past the BlackBerry days, of course. And by that point... Android was really hitting on all cylinders. It was good stuff. I tried Android when it was buggy and crashed and memory leaks and all kinds of awful, awful things. And by the time I went to the next phone, I tried the iPhone had its kinks worked out. And so I've been like, yeah, man, it just works. It's perfect. And so I think it's like a matter of timing more than anything else.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of products that spend a lot of money on advertising that's really just about whatever one dumb luck you fell into, and you're probably going to just stick with it for the rest of your life because switching over is just way too much work.
There's certainly a huge switching cost to phones.
Right, and just a knowledge cost, just how long it takes to learn. I mean, just when a new iPhone comes out and I get it, I'm sitting there trying to figure it out forever, or new iOS download or whatever, but to switch to an Android or something, it just doesn't interest me even a tiny bit. Like the incremental gains I would get from a better phone are not worth the time it would take me to learn it.
So we do have to talk about sports somewhat, don't we?
I think so. It's in the contract.
So I think the Cavaliers should break camp with Kevin Love. I think they should aim to trade him at the deadline.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he has any value right now, that we're going to get some great return anyway. And I keep seeing this argument like, oh no, the Cavs, they need to tank. Should they tank or should they keep Love and try to compete for a playoff spot? And they got tanked. Like LeBron tanked them. There's no tanking. They have been tanked. It is not a voluntary decision. And I don't think we're Kevin Love away from being, a playoff team, let alone the 10th worst team or anything like that. Like, we're going to be bad with or without Kevin Love. And so keep him, see if he can gain some trade value, see if his presence can help the young guys learn a little bit, because he'll be sucking up a lot of shots and they won't get free reign to do whatever they want. And he'll provide spacing and leadership and all that stuff. Like, I would keep him around as long as that's what he wants. If he really wants out, then do right by Kevin Love, and that's fine.
So a couple of things. Number one, I think the Cavaliers can be good enough to win. If everything goes well, they can be good enough to win kind of that 35 to 40 games, which actually might sneak them into the playoffs. Would it not? Could it?
It could. And I guess it would take a lot of things going well. I guess my thing is, I remember JR during the regular season and Tristan during the regular season, and my faith in Jordan Clarkson is at about 0. And those guys are going to be taking a lot of shots.
Yeah, I mean, they're more likely to win 30 or fewer games. I'm just saying, with Kevin Love, with a good coaching season from Ty Lue and a couple things going right in the East, they could sneak into the playoffs with slightly under 500 record. It's happened before.
Oh yeah, bad teams make the playoffs, and if everything were to go right, and Jetty is for real, and Sexton is pretty decent, and George Hill is healthy, and Kevin Love is healthy, and Korver is still playing at a decently high level, they could certainly. They're going to be a try-hard kind of a team with guys like Sexton and Jetty and Nance.
It's definitely not worth it.
No, I wouldn't try to compete. I want to lose, but I think that there's a way to lose and still have a decent culture around and still have a good learning experience. Because it seems like we're learning.
It's not the full-on tank like Chris Grant did.
I agree. I hope that they.
Because I think that's counterproductive to your wannabe stars. If you really want Colin Sexton to be the best version of Colin Sexton that he could ever possibly become, you don't do it by putting him in the worst possible basketball scenario for his first 2 or 3 seasons.
And I think you can be bad without, and really bad, I mean like top, 3-5 pick area bad, without doing the things that Philly did to tank. And although I like Brett Brown in Philly, so even while they were tanking, they had a coach that could kind of keep things together a little bit. But what the Cavs did last time, which was just trot out awful players. I think you can be bad while still having an environment where guys can learn. And I think we're kind of set up with that, with a guy like Kevin Love and Kyle Korver and young guys like Sexton, who are going to be exciting, but most likely not a positive impact yet, and things like that. I think that we can be bad and not in a terrible situation. JR and Tristan probably aren't going to be helpful, but they've won the finals before, and that's not the worst thing to have around kids. Tristan has been a warrior throughout his career, so I don't think being around him is going to be the worst thing ever, and I think that they can kind of do both.
Would you be willing to trade JR if it meant taking on a salary equivalent to JR for longer?
I would want an asset of some sort. We'd have to get a first-round pick.
Or are you so... Well, I mean, the asset ultimately for these Cavaliers is going to be cap space.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They need to get out of the space. But I wouldn't be using any of our assets to get out of cap space. Just let it happen organically. We've got a lot of guys expiring. I might, at the deadline, if there's some teams who want to free up cap space for 2019, I would then take on long-term money for a guy like JR or Hill, if they're going to give us something, a young player or some picks, because I just don't know that free agency is ever going to be a playing ground for us.
See, and I think it can be. I'm not sure that it can be with Dan Gilbert and Kobe Altman leading the way, but I think it certainly could be. If the Cavaliers had a different owner and Brad Stevens, you're telling me I don't think the mystique of Boston is what's driving players to want to play there.
Oh no, they certainly have the culture set up, and it'll be interesting to see what Ty Lue does.
Like, do you think Kyrie Irving cares about Larry Bird?
No, not at all. He wanted to play with Brad Stevens, and I mean, there's something being a bigger media market. But to your point, this is a massive free agent year where there are tons of stars and tons of secondary level guys and restricted level guys coming in the same year, and only so many teams with money. So there is a chance that the Cavaliers could play this right and walk away with one or two prizes in free agency that aren't stars, but could be young, good players that could certainly help them. And like I said, it's not going to be Jimmy Butler or Kevin Durant or something, but maybe you could steal a Tobias Harris or a Terry Rozier or somebody like that might be a little bit fun and kick off your rebuild. Where then you've got Sexton, you've got a top 5 pick this year, you've got another young guy, and suddenly you've got a pretty fun young core. So I think there's a path that the tank only takes 1 or 2 years before the team gets back into being interesting, but it's going to take a lot of lottery luck for that to happen, most likely.
Not only lottery luck, the Cavaliers are probably going to have to find, and you don't just find a Draymond Green, but they're going to have to find something where they weren't expected to find anything. I mean, that's really the key. You look at the Spurs and what's really, yes, they got Tim Duncan, but it's the Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. Those were the extras that really put him over the top, because Tim Duncan couldn't have done it by himself. And I think that was really one of the, obviously the Warriors had a number of lucky things. None luckier than Draymond Green, though.
Oh, for sure. And anytime you're trying to be good, it takes a ton of that. I mean, even the Cavs, we didn't think JR was going to be what he turned into be, and we didn't know the league was going to shift into a manner where Tristan's ability to switch onto smaller guards would suddenly be one of the most important things you could possibly do as a defender in the league. There's a lot of little lucky things like that happened.
And even going back to LeBron's first stint with the Cavaliers, imagine if Gordon Gunn doesn't mess up Carlos Boozer, who they found in the second round.
Right. Oh, it takes just an incredible amount of luck, and the Cavs are certainly going to need that. So they also need to put themselves in position to have that, and whether that's getting a bunch of assets and draft picks and things like that. I think I'm not one of those who thinks Billy Preston, the guy they just signed to a 2-way contract that's been okay in summer league, I'm not penciling him in to be anything, but those are the kind of chances they need to take. A big recruit that was ineligible for a year, and hey, the talent is definitely there. Maybe they can turn him into something. Like, those are the kind of stabs that they need to take.
Does it shock you that over the last 4 years, the Cavaliers really haven't used a largely wasted regular season and trying to take those shots?
Yeah, and it is frustrating. But I also think that's the nature of having LeBron.
Did we really need Kyle Korver minutes during the regular season?
No, but LeBron kind of demands that. The problem with LeBron is that he has absolutely zero patience to do anything other than get veterans in and win. He has never shown any interest in developing younger guys. And so,
but it's not like the veterans weren't going to be there. They just didn't have to play.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And we gave Jetty a little bit of time last year, but not enough. We weren't playing him nearly enough.
Nope.
So there are guys like that we certainly could have played out more, and guys taking shots on that you wish we had gotten. And instead we're playing guys like Jordan McRae and giving, our best players, friends, minutes, things like that. So, yeah, we definitely didn't play it smart. But it's difficult, I think, when you have a LeBron on your team to do that.
Is it, or does it just take a stronger GM and coach? Because I think there are coaches out there that see the forest for the trees. I mean, certainly Popovich isn't gonna do. He's gonna play Danny Green. He's gonna develop Danny Green. He's gonna make sure that he develops those pieces because he knows that's what it takes to get over the top. If the Cavaliers work a little bit harder with Jetty, who's to say that he's not more effective in the NBA Finals than Kyle Korver? And that's not to say that the Cavaliers win the NBA Finals because of Jetty Osman, but they could have been a heck of a lot better.
Windhorst, whenever he's on a podcast, talks about aggregators, and he tries to warn anything he says, aggregators don't take this. And
Yes.
Tomorrow we're going to have Craig Lindahl says that Jetty Osman was the difference in the NBA Finals this year. It's going to be on every NBA site. I agree, but we've seen the Heat, who have a very strong culture and maybe as dominant a personality in the front office as you can, also do this thing where they just trot out a bunch of corpses and not really develop any young guys. I mean, they took a shot on Greg Oden while they were there, and that was I don't disagree with them trying that, but we tried with Larry Sanders, and Jetty got a little bit of time, and we did little things like that, and they just didn't pan out at all. But I think LeBron just doesn't have any appetite for that. And you can kind of look at the signings they're making in LA and see what he wants. I mean, these are the guys he wants. He wants guys who have been in the playoffs and that have played hard before, and that's who he wants to play around. And again, him signing short contracts puts the kind of pressure on a team that makes it more difficult to say those kind of things and put their foot down.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. It seems like, especially at this stage of his career, LeBron's kind of setting himself up to fail almost in LA. And I know we won't fail, but I think that he's artificially reducing his own ceiling.
Oh, I agree with that. And it's just very strange for him to punt on this season. I mean, he is so healthy and so incredible at staying in top shape, but at some point that has to go away. He's going to be 34 at the end of this season, and he's trading in the last 2 or 3 years of his prime for what looks like a wasted year.
Do you think he thinks he's trading anything? Or do you think he thinks he's so good that he's got a chance and he'll see what the team looks like by the end of the season?
He very well could. That worked for him this year. He made the NBA Finals with a pretty junk roster. So,
do you think he's really scared of the Houston Rockets?
That's a good question. His friendship with Chris Paul is the only thing that makes me think that maybe.
I don't think he's scared of any team I don't think he's scared of any team, and I don't even think he's scared of the Warriors, but he knows that I think that's the only team he thinks is better than him plus any group of guys.
That's true. He might think that, all right, I couldn't get that second guy once Kyrie left, and Love just wasn't quite that guy. In LA, I'm more likely to get that guy. So just send me there. We'll figure out who that guy is later, and I'll do what I do.
Yep.
He could very well think that. Probably not going to work for him, but he could very well think that. And that's not me hating on LeBron. It's just, that just doesn't seem like it's going to work there.
No, we've seen it too many times. And you can't trust the guy who has the ball in his hands. He has to be supremely confident. You expect him to be supremely confident, but that doesn't mean he's right.
Right. It is funny how we treat confidence in athletes. Like, we're constantly surprised by it. Like, some junk player will come out and say that they're definitely going to beat some team that's clearly better, and we all run with it. Like, I can't believe he said that. Like, well, yes, he's an athlete. They all have to have this certain level of confidence. And also, what else are they going to say or do? So yeah. It always cracks me up when we run with that.
So, last but not least, do you think you're going to make it the whole month of July without Twitter? Or do you think you're going to quit early and say, well, you know what, I learned my lesson and jump back in?
It's one of those things where, like, I was sitting there feeling like I was doing pretty well, and I looked at the date, and I'm like, it's only the 11th? I've been doing this for, not even a week. I felt like it's been forever. I was, pretty feeling good about myself, like I was doing a good job, but it's like, oh, my God.
Well, you are doing a good job. How's the reaction at home? Because I know your wife was pretty vocal in saying that you weren't going to make it.
I think the kids are definitely enjoying Dad not having his phone in his hand nearly as much. I think as much as my wife is excited for this, there are parts of her that are pretty annoyed because I don't know anything that's going on. So she tries to talk to me about any current event. I just have no concept of what she's talking about. And I just pretty much tune. It's almost like being off Twitter. I've just turned off all of that, where she's like, well, don't you want to know about those kids in the cave? I'm just like, no, I'm not going to learn anything else about this. I don't need to know about it at all. I'm just shutting off the internet completely.
And do you think you're worse off for not knowing about the kids in the cave? I mean, it's an amazing story, but wait for the TV movie.
Yeah, no, I don't think so at all. It's hard. I wish there was a way to filter Twitter so that I only saw the super relevant tweets. I watched a bunch of Summer League NBA games, Cavs games specifically, And I would love to just kind of see what other people are saying about Colin Sexton, just to get another take on it. Just that's my hobby. I enjoy to watch sports. I would love to see how other people are viewing it. And so I'm missing that, but there's no way to filter out the 99% of the other stuff that is negative, or is not as good of an experience. So,
but I do think when I come back, Twitter will be more like appointment viewing. So when I'm watching a Browns game, bringing up Twitter, that's when it's kind of its most valuable, and maybe after. But just all right, I didn't just write an article, I didn't just release a podcast. The Indians aren't playing, the Cavaliers aren't playing, and I'm watching a bunch of people try and craft perfect tweets about how much they hate Donald Trump.
Right, and I hope I will be better at just avoiding the arguments and just partaking in conversations that are fun and good and productive. What's going on with this player? How's he doing? What do you think about this trade idea? Like that kind of stuff, rather than I can't believe this.
Or where it's fun. Like Twitter, it might be the worst place in the world to argue about meaningful topics.
Yes.
So I need to stop trying to make it a relevant venue for that.
Yes, exactly.
I used to have a policy where I would not talk politics unless I could see your face.
That's probably a good policy. Even then, it should just be to never talk politics.
Oh, but the things that we say using social media, we generally don't say it the same way when we're face to face.
Oh, no. We're so much angrier. It's odd how many things in life that when left to our own devices, we turn to being angry about them. And social media is definitely one of those where it could very easily just be a fun, great thing. And a lot of times it is. A lot of people have a lot of great stuff out there that's creative and funny and wonderful, and my life is better for consuming a lot of it. But there's so much of it that just the natural reaction is negative. Yeah,
and it's given people a voice, and not everybody knows the most efficient and proper ways to use their voice. Not saying that they should, they have to, but we'd all be better off.
And a lot of people like getting any sort of reaction, and so they use their voice less so to make a point and more to that little adrenaline high of getting responses and getting in that argument and feeling important for a couple minutes.
Yeah. How many reactions? How many likes? How many retweets?
Right. What's your ratio?
Let me check my stats. All right. Well, this was fun. Let's do it again next week.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.